December 19th, 1944. The cold air bit sharply into the faces of the men as dawn struggled to break over the dense forests surrounding Bastogne, Belgium. Snow fell thick and heavy, coating the battered tanks and muddy ground in a chilling white silence. The quiet was deceptive. Somewhere beyond the tree line, the low rumble of German tanks and artillery grew louder, growing closer by the minute. Inside one tank, a small crew sat tense and alert. They were part of a unit unlike any other African-American soldiers assigned to the 761st Tank Battalion, known as the Black Panthers. Despite the skepticism and prejudice they faced within the army, their skill and courage were undeniable. This crew, led by Sergeant Warren, tightened their grips on their controls. Their orders were clear yet daunting: hold their ground at all costs, for 3 days, with limited support and against overwhelming odds. They would face relentless attacks, the fate of Bastogne resting on their shoulders. The freezing wind howled through the cracked armor, mixing with the thundering blasts of shells and machine gun fire. Smoke choked the air, turning the battlefield into a swirling, chaotic haze. Yet through the chaos, the crew remained focused, determined to defend a crucial crossroads that could change the course of the war. In those brutal hours, the men behind the tanks fought not only the enemy outside, but also the barriers of racism and doubt. Their bravery would etch their names into history, proving that courage knows no color. As the battle unfolded, each moment stretched taut with tension and hope. This was no ordinary fight. It was a stand against both an advancing army and the injustice within their own ranks. The 761st Tank Battalion was formed in 1942, a segregated unit composed entirely of African American soldiers. At a time when the U.S. military was deeply divided by race, these men faced prejudice from both their enemies and their own country. Yet, they trained relentlessly, determined to prove their worth on the battlefield. Among them was Sergeant Warren, a skilled tank commander who had earned respect through his leadership and tactical knowledge. His crew included Private First Class Davies, the gunner with sharp eyes and steady hands; Corporal Jenkins, the loader, known for his quick reflexes; and Driver Thompson, whose steady nerves kept their tank moving under fire. The battalion had already seen combat in France and Germany, earning a reputation for fierce fighting despite being often overlooked by their commanders. Their motto was simple: come out fighting. This was not just a battle cry, it was a declaration of dignity and determination. As the German offensive the battle of the Bulge pushed into Belgium in December 1944, the 761st found themselves at the heart of the fight. Bastogne was a strategic crossroads, and the Nazis aimed to capture it quickly to split Allied forces. The Black Tank crew understood the stakes. Holding Bastogne was critical, and they had orders to delay the enemy advance. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, Sergeant Warren and his men were ready to do whatever it took. Their battle would not only test their skills, but challenge the very notions of race and valor in wartime. In the freezing cold, under a sky darkened by smoke and war, these men prepared to hold a line that others doubted they could. The first hours of the siege were brutal. The German forces launched wave after wave of attacks, their tanks and infantry pressing hard against the defenders. Sergeant Warren's crew was positioned at a critical junction, tasked with stopping the enemy's advance on the northern edge of Bastogne. Inside the cramped tank, tension built with every passing second. The roar of the engine mixed with the crackle of radio chatter and the sharp bark of machine guns. Sergeant Warren's voice was calm but commanding. Hold steady. Watch your sectors. No giving ground. Private Davis scanned through the sight, tracking the shadowy shapes emerging from the fog. With a steady breath, he fired the tank's 75mm cannon, striking a German panzer squarely. The explosion rocked the battlefield. A brief victory in a relentless struggle. Corporal Jenkins loaded shells quickly, sweat freezing on his brow as the tank shuddered under incoming fire. Driver Thompson maneuvered the tank skillfully through muddy terrain, avoiding craters and debris while keeping the vehicle in position. For 3 days, the Black Tank crew held their ground. They repelled attacks in freezing cold, with limited supplies and no reinforcements. Each skirmish tested their endurance and resolve. They became a thorn in the enemy's side, delaying the German advance and buying precious time for Allied forces to regroup. Their stand was not only a military success, but a powerful statement against the discrimination they faced. The bravery of Sergeant Warren and his crew challenged the prejudices that questioned their abilities. In the face of danger, they transformed from doubted soldiers to hero symbols of strength, unity, and resilience. Their story would inspire generations to come, a testament to fighting against both external and internal battles. By December 20th, 1944, the situation around Bastogne was dire. The German army had launched its surprise Ardennes offensive, aiming to split the Allied lines and seize critical territory. Bastogne, a key crossroads town, was surrounded and under siege. Supplies were low, reinforcements scarce, and the bitter winter cold added to the misery of the defenders. Among the defenders, the black tank crew of the 761st Tank Battalion faced an almost impossible mission. They were ordered to hold a vital intersection alone, a position that could halt the German armored advance if held, or open the way for the enemy if lost. The challenge was overwhelming, outnumbered and outgunned, with only a handful of tanks and no immediate backup. The idea that this crew could hold Bastogne's northern approaches for 3 days seemed beyond belief. Their presence was doubted not only by the enemy, but by some within their own army. Segregation and racism cast shadows over their capabilities, making their mission a test, not just of skill, but of their very right to fight. Despite this, Sergeant Warren and his crew embraced the challenge. They knew failure meant the enemy breaking through and possibly changing the course of the battle. Their task was not just to hold ground, but to defy the impossible expectations placed upon them. This was more than a military order. It was a moment to prove courage and equality under fire. The impossible idea that a small, segregated crew could stand firm against overwhelming odds and make history. The 3 days that followed were a relentless ordeal. German tanks and infantry surged repeatedly, battering the defenders with artillery and machine gun fire. Visibility was often near zero, with snow and smoke blending the battlefield into a swirling white-gray nightmare. Inside their tank, Sergeant Warren kept his crew focused. "Stay sharp," he ordered. Voice steady but urgent. "Every second counts. We hold this line no matter what." Private Davis's eyes never left the sights, firing precise shots that knocked out enemy vehicles one by one. Each successful hit was a small victory, but the cost was heavy. The tank shook from near misses, and the crew faced exhaustion and fear. Corporal Jenkins worked with practiced speed, loading shells amid the deafening noise and cold. Driver Thompson maneuvered expertly through muddy, cratered ground, repositioning their tank to cover new threats and avoid ambushes. Despite suffering damage and dwindling supplies, the crew refused to yield. Their tank became a symbol of resistance, a beacon of hope for surrounded infantry, and a warning to the enemy. Outside, the battle raged with brutality. The crew's tenacity delayed the German advance, buying critical hours for Allied reinforcements to arrive and turn the tide of the Battle of the Bulge. Each hour tested their limits. The cold seeped into their bones. Fatigue clawed at their minds. Yet they fought with unyielding resolve. Their stand was not just a military act, but a testament to their will to be seen, respected, and heard in a divided army. When the siege finally lifted, the black tank crew had held Bastogne alone for 3 days, a feat both extraordinary and inspiring. Their actions shattered assumptions, challenged prejudice, and carved their place in history as warriors who stood firm when the world counted them out. The siege of Bastogne ended with the arrival of General Patton's Third Army, breaking the German encirclement and turning the tide of the Battle of the Bulge. The black tank crew's stand became a vital part of the enemy in protecting the crucial crossroads that held the entire front together. Yet, 4 years after the war, their story remained largely unknown. The bravery of African American soldiers was often overlooked, overshadowed by the segregation and discrimination that persisted within the military and society. The 761st Tank Battalion faced recognition only decades later, when their heroic deeds were officially honored. Their stand at Bastogne was a turning point not just militarily, but socially. It challenged deeply entrenched racial prejudices and proved that courage, skill, and sacrifice transcended color. The black tank crew showed that in the crucible of war, true valor shines through all barriers. Historically, their story contributed to the eventual desegregation of the U.S. Armed Forces in 1948, a crucial step toward civil rights. The legacy of the 761st Battalion echoes beyond the battlefield, inspiring future generations to fight for equality and justice. Sergeant Warren and his crew returned home as heroes, though their recognition was slow in coming. Their actions at Bastogne became a symbol of resilience and determination, quietly challenging the status quo in a country still grappling with racial inequality. The 761st Tank Battalion's motto, "Come out fighting," reflected more than just their combat spirit. It was a statement of dignity and pride in the face of discrimination. Their service paved the way for future African-American soldiers and reminded the world that heroism knows no race. Today, monuments, documentaries, and books honor the Black Panthers who stood alone at Bastogne, preserving their memory for generations. Their story serves as a powerful reminder that courage and sacrifice can break down walls of prejudice and change the course of history. In the cold, snowy forests of Belgium, a small tank crew made a stand that echoed far beyond the battlefield, a human story of bravery, brotherhood, and the fight for respect. This is the history of World War II. Whoever oppresses the innocent is an oppressor. Neither the earth belongs to this oppressor, nor does the sky belong to him. We stand now and forever with the oppressed. This is WWII Files. See you in the next one.